Hello, David, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm David Wheeler. Currently serve as senior minister at New Covenant Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
And how did you get involved? I know, was it a collaboration of different faith leaders that started the immigration vigils? Was that, I think, like a 2016, 2017? How did
Wait,
that come about?
2017, our friends at Mayflower United Church of Christ uh, pretty well helped start it. And there was a few of us, other ministers and congregations that came along, but the most recent reiteration of that was done again. Mayflower and their senior minister, Reverend Dr. Lori Walkie, was involved, but it was a much more widespread effort to get it going from several of us, different ministers and local congregations. So uh, it's um, it's a coalition, I think, of 6 to 8 congregations and probably 10, 12 ministers from different uh, congregations currently.
So, what drew you to this work to begin with? You're disciples of Christ. Is that your faith tradition?
Well, I actually ordained in the United Church of Christ, but serving a Disciples of Christ congregation currently. So um, it's a full partnership, and those two denominations uh, can share ministers interchangeably. So, but what drew me to it, yeah, was um, just my love of justice and yeah, a deep belief in the equality and dignity of each and every human being carrying the image of God, but also in my current congregation, we actually have members who are directly impacted by some of the current administration's practices and ways that they are carrying out our immigration laws in the country. So I have deeply personal reasons.
And from a faith leader's perspective, what do you feel is sort of like I mean, maybe you can speak from a Christian perspective, but what is sort of like the theological basis for engaging in this work, and why is this a priority for your belief system in your congregation?
Yeah, we have a strong belief, as I mentioned, in the dignity and worth of each and every human being. That we all carry the image of God within us, and so that includes uh, our neighbors who happen to have been born on the other side of an arbitrary border. I say arbitrary because um, you know we recognize that God didn't create those borders or boundaries between nations that people did, and they've shifted and adjusted and according to different empires or regimes or leaders over time, and more than anything, my complaint with the current practices is not that just we want just open borders necessarily, from my perspective, but that we be humane and decent and merciful in the ways that we deal with our neighbors, but especially those who are in a vulnerable position. Some people, dreamers, for example, were promised certain things, um, and it seems like now those promises are not necessarily being carried forward in good faith. And so I think it's an integrity issue also for our nation. And I feel like we're in some sort of a crisis with how we carry out these different executions of our laws and the different ways that we um, treat populations who have historically been marginalized in the United States. And by that, I just simply mean anybody who's not uh, doesn't look white or present themselves as white. I feel like it's a very racist system that seems to be directed towards non-white appearing people in unjust, unfair ways.
Thank you for that. And what do you feel is the role of faith communities, especially now in this kind of current escalating crisis?
Well, I think, of course, faith communities would do well to focus on providing a safe place for people to come and to share their hopes, dreams, as well as their fears and um, anxieties. So I think providing a sense of belonging, providing a sense of safety, a place to share what's really on our hearts and minds as it pertains to these current situations we're trying to navigate within the immigration, our broken immigration system. I think so. First of all, community, belonging, solidarity, but then also, hopefully, we can become a place where resources are shared as and um, where people can find um, ways to support one another and to network with other churches and to share the needs that we might have as we discover them from our own members of the community, and others who are being either displaced or feel threatened by our current immigration practices. Um, I think safety, shelter, and resourcing for connection with attorneys and others who can help navigate um, a process whereby people can either get a green card, a work permit, or at least lay low while these things are worked out.
Do you have any recommendations for faith communities who might encounter that situation?
I think so. I think they need to probably have their governing boards, uh, whatever that looks like in different settings, to talk about these things openly and to have some sort of a plan. I know we're working in the early stages at our own congregation about that, but we do have one person, one man. That it has direct connections to our congregation through family, and we're not sure where he is currently. He has been detained somewhere by ICE, but his family does not know where he is for sure. And so that was a real rude awakening for us when it hit that close to home. So we are currently um, beginning talks as to what can we do? How can we best protect folks? And quite honestly, it might mean for the foreseeable future, members of our own congregations, even those who are citizens but who happen not to look or present themselves as white, it might be the safest thing for them to just worship online, watch our live streams, and come to smaller gatherings that as they can, because it seems like ICE um, could make an appearance. I would just encourage anyone out there, regardless of your political preferences, uh, to look really closely at our current situation and realize that these are not ordinary times. Um, I feel like use this word or hear this word 10 times a day, but these are unprecedented times. Um, and I think it calls for serious measures and preparations and lots and lots of what might be difficult conversations, but they're worth having in our congregations. And because the worst thing that we could do is just assume that these things are just noise and that they won't have any direct bearing on the people we serve in our congregations. But what we're learning is that's just not the case, that there are real people's lives affected. And so I would just encourage open conversations, uh, regardless of how easy or difficult they are. Um, Real people's lives are at stake, and real people's lives are on the line. And therefore, I think people of good faith of every different persuasion would want our neighbors to be well cared for and treated with dignity. And so this is no time to go to sleep. It's a time to be alert, and it's a time to be be prepared to take action in order to protect um, all of our members, of not only of our churches, but of the community um, who would be at risk.
Thank you for this and thank you for your work. Hi and welcome. I'm Kat Romero, and tonight I have Nicole. Nicole, can you introduce yourself? Over the course of just even the last 6 months, there have been some huge shifts in immigration policy and enforcement in our country. Can you give us just a broad overview of what some of these changes have been and then how they're affecting immigrant communities here in Oklahoma?
Yes. Well, just some of the things that we have seen is just the massive increase of the ICE officers, right? The raids, the expansion on the detention centers, the fear among the community. Those are just changes that me, as a community organizer, I'm in the community all the time, and that's what I see. The events that are annual events, like that we go every year or every 6 months, and we know that 150 people they usually show up. Now we're seeing 20 people, 15 people. No people are showing up to these face-to-face events or in-person events. People are afraid to take their kids to school. People are afraid to go and get groceries. People are afraid to leave their homes. People are self-deporting because of fear, of being in those detention centers that are completely inhumane because the conditions in the detention centers are super cruel, are inhumane. People, personal friends of mine, that they've been already deported or pick up and they've been spending time in the detention center for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Their experience is like they don't give them food, it's completely cold. They barely let them go to a restroom. Sometimes they don't even let them talk to the attorney. So it's just, it feels completely I don't know, it's so unfair, it's so cruel that in this country we're treating people in these conditions for a crime of being undocumented, which is that's a civil defense, it's not a crime. So all of these things are just creating so much fear in the community. And like I said, I know in Tulsa, they just expanded their beds. I think like they added 100 or 200 more beds to a detention center in Tulsa. We're seeing the detention center Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. Which that's again is like a strategy of causing fear in the community, so they self-deport and they completely forget that they have rights, right? Because if a person they're just like, no, I don't want to be separated with my family, but I don't want to be sent to his detention center either. So what do I have left? I don't care, and I just like I'm gonna self-deport, and that's what they want. They don't want to. They want the people to exercise their rights. They just want to cause this fear among the people. And they're just like they're picking up people with zero criminal records. It's been proven they don't have any criminal record in their um in their background, their only criminal offense is being here undocumented, which again is being like illegally is not a criminal offense, it's just a civil offense. So um right now ICE it's been they OKCP they say that they're not working with them, but at the same time they're creating these strategies to I don't know, go to the south and stop more people without licenses. Just when the ICE raids are happening, we're seeing cars with the FBI, with the DEA, also like mixed with all of the ICE officers. Now they're not showing their faces either, so we don't even know if they're actually like ICE officers or people just wanting to like mess with our community. We're seeing also people, racist people, that they're just like faking to be ICE officers and stopping people and like treating them in a very cruel way and scaring them. Scams as well. So it's just a whole all of this. So of course right now with the big beautiful bill as well, which is gonna increase the funding to all of these the ICE agencies and all of these other agencies. This is just, probably is gonna be even worse. We're also seeing a lot of people emboldened by this hatred and cruelty. Um, right now, with the executive order that President Trump wanted to do, just speak English. Now people are like afraid to speak their languages outside. Um, some people they're asking me like, "Are you not afraid to speak Spanish in Walmart or in the park?" And I was like, "No." But this is what they're thinking about. I remember I was just in Colombia a week ago, and I was at the airport in Houston, and there's this Latina girl, and then she heard me speaking Spanish over the phone with my mom, and she asked me, "You're not afraid to speak Spanish?" And I was like, "No, why would I?" And then she's like, "Well, everything that is happening, I heard that like people are like hitting people because they're speaking Spanish," and I'm like, "Well, I I didn't know that, but that's crazy." But this is just like the things and the rumors that are going on in the community. So imagine the fear of the kids, like you see kids that they're asking their kids and like, "Where are you from?" And they're afraid to say like, "I'm Latino, I'm Mexican, I'm Colombian," just because they don't want to be discriminated or pointed out. In February, we saw the case of this 10-year-old in Texas who took their life because she was being bullied at her school, telling her that she was going to be alone because their parents were going to get deported. And all of these kids, this is what these kids are thinking about. Like these kids, they go every day to their schools without knowing that if their parents are going to be in their homes when they're coming back. You know, so the level of anxiety among the kids, the young people, it's just insane. And then defunding our mental health services in the state of Oklahoma is not helping at all. So yeah, and these are just some changes from the community perspective that I have seen as a community organizer with the ACLU in the last 6 months. And also it depends on the principal, I was in Enid this Saturday for an OU rights town hall meeting, a training, and one of the principals was there, and he was like, in one of our schools, like we're not letting enter anyone. Like we told them, like you cannot enter here. Our school, our kids are protected. Like just do not come here to try to pick up our kids. So it depends also on the school system, the school principal, all of that. But definitely, like we are seeing a lot of mental health, issues increasing, which obvious reasons, even us as community organizers, we have to like, checking ourselves constantly with therapy and everything because it's a hard job.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's kind of a similar question I had about faith communities because, they've talked about coming to faith communities as well, which had sort of been a little off limits before, but it seems like not anymore. So what kind of action can faith communities themselves do? Like if someone, agents or otherwise, come to the church doors, and then what about just your individual person of faith who feels really strongly about this, that wants to either, should we be intervening? Like if we see something in the street, like what should we be doing?
So that's a really great question because right now, my action, take action is like, if you have some sort of privilege, please use it because our neighbors need that. Right now, they need that help, like be a good bystander, be a good neighbor, be a good ally, love thy neighbor, right? So I know that if they come to a church, they cannot enter to the private places. They can enter to public places and public spaces. But and actually in Enid, they ask this exact same question because we were in a church, and one of our attorneys, they said, because they asked like, how can I make it private, right? So for example, if you have like your office or a room that you can put like a piece of paper or like a sign, say like, this is a private space, do not enter, and that automatically that will make this space private. So they can enter maybe to a space where you do the masses and everything like that, the gatherings. But if you choose like some spaces that are private and you put that sign outside, it make this space a private space, and they cannot enter these spaces without a judicial warrant, explicitly saying that they're trying to enter into this private space. So we have to be very very wary with that. In the judicial warrant, and it have to be a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. They're two different. So administrative warrant, they can only be used to pick up a person in a public space. So for example, they have to enter a home or a private space with a judicial warrant. But if the person is in the street, in the side of the street, in the road, on the road, they can pick this person up with an administrative warrant. But for example, to a church or a private space like this, they have to have the judicial warrant signed by a judge and expedited by a court in the state of Oklahoma, with also like an effective date. So if the judicial warrant is not signed by a judge, it's not working. Also, if the date is not effective, it cannot work. And if it's an administrative warrant, it doesn't work either. So this is this is when it comes to like if ICE shows up to your church or to you like face spaces. But if someone is just very strongly about immigration, this cruelty and unfairness and persecution, because it feels like a persecution at this point. Say it out loud. I think that always helps. Like being a leader in that community and making a stand. I think that shows that allyship, and it gives people that safe space. There is like a lot of people that have come to me and they're like, well, I go to my church and they're always nice to me, but they haven't said anything about what's happening with immigrants. So it's like, then where do you stand at, Are you gonna say behind doors that you're standing with immigrants, but you're not willing to say it out loud in front of the people? What does that show to us? If you really want to be a good ally, just be brave and be willing to speak up for us and speak up for our community and say, this is just not right. It's not right what is happening with this community. It's cruel, it's bad, and it's not Christian at all. It's not about being here the legal way or being here and doing it in the right way, because we're seeing people being picked up at the courts. They go for their every 6 months check-ins or every bi-weekly check-ins or 3 months check-ins, and they go to court because they have to go to court, and they're just like ICE officers are waiting there for them to be picked up. So, and this is people that have work permits, that have green cards, that have DACA. So it's not people that are undocumented completely. They don't care if these people are contributing to our society. This is people that are helping our society be better. Like my friend Fernando, like I don't want to talk anything else to his story, but I had so many friends that they're teachers. They're homeowners, they're paying taxes, they're, such a great citizens, and they do their civic duty. And they cannot vote, they cannot receive federal services, but yet again, they love this country so much that they're willing to give their efforts and their time and commit to make this country better.
And so if like for a just an individual out on the street, what would be, should you intervene, or is that like, what's the course of action right now that
so what we're asking people or allies is to record. So for example, they can record in this way. So it's this way, it doesn't really work the case, but this way is better because it has like a better outreach.
Okay.
So please record in this way if you want to record. We're asking people to be at least 8 to 10 feet away from the interaction between the ICE officer and the person. If you can scream at the person and say like, hey, remember, you have the right to stay silent. You have the right to go to an attorney. Do not sign anything. Please do not sign anything. If you choose to exercise your right to remain silent, do not say anything. Just be quiet. Call your attorney. Always, try to remember and remind people what their rights are, right? Because sometimes they just forget. It's so um, it's scary, it's so scary that your brain just goes into a cloud, and then you just like, oh my gosh, like what my grades are. So we have seen that it has worked. A lot of people, they're like being in the street in the interaction with the ICE officer, and then we have bystanders. They're like, hey, do not say anything. Do not say anything. Call your attorney. That those are your rights, regardless of your immigration status. And some of these people, because of that, they have been able to get out later. So it makes a difference. It makes a difference. So if you record the interaction, you cannot interfere with the interaction. So please do not interfere, because we want you to be safe. But you can record what's happening, and then you can be a witness. And in the case, in the future, this is gonna help their case. So, for example, later on, you can, if there is a family member, you can be like, hey, I was a witness of the interaction, I have a video, how can I send it to you? So this can help their case. So all of these things are super helpful, and it's not making you unsafe, but it really helps them. It really helps our community. We need this type of allyship. If this is in the case that you're a bystander, right? If you want to also help, there is different organizations that are trying to, sometimes take groceries to houses, and or maybe like, right now we're seeing a lot of the power of attorneys, and so many of these kids, they don't have other family than their parents. So if you know undocumented person or immigrant and you're close to them, you can help them by being the contact of emergency in their schools, right? Because if their parents are gone, no one is going to be able to pick up their kids. So these kids are just going to be school in the limbo. So if they have someone that is an American citizen, as an emergency contact, or as a second contact in their school records, then this is super helpful for the kids. So, different ways that you can help, and just be prepared. We're asking people to do a power of attorneys in case that you are deported. Start getting your finances in check. Like all of these things. It sucks. Your dogs. We have seen so many dogs that are just left out, and these dogs are just going to a foster system. So it's I love my dogs. I come from a very family that we have like 15 dogs in home in Colombia. So for me, that's just like my heart. So all of these, like if you know someone, personally, like just even if it's like, okay, like I will take care of your dog, of your cat. All of these will help. Yeah.
What are some of the organizations that would help, like with the groceries and that kind of thing, that we could
I know
contact?
that right now, Community Response Network, and they're in social media like that, Community Response Network. They are trying to do this grocery delivery. Um, they did it like the first one was like a month ago, and it was really successful. Sometimes they just like donate food for food pantries, so people can just pick up food there. Um, LULAC, a League of United Latin American Citizens, they are doing community walks. So they're just like going into a community and canvassing door to door and say like, hey, these are your rights, giving like know your rights cards. These are some of the resources that you can have. This is a list of attorneys in case that something happened. So you can also find LULAC on Facebook and Instagram, League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC Oklahoma, LULAC Oklahoma. Dream Action Oklahoma, they're doing fantastic trainings also, how to be a bystander, how to be a good neighbor, how to be a good ally. And this is DAOK Oklahoma, Instagram, Facebook. And of course, us with the ACLU, we provide know your rights trainings as much as we can, advocacy trainings. So yeah, these are some of the organizations that they're doing a really great job. And Latitude Legal, in case any person wants to like donate some money, Latitude Legal, they're one of the only non-profits that provide free legal counsel to immigrants in the state of Oklahoma. So they are doing a fantastic job, but it's just not enough. So they're always looking for donations, and just even a lot of attorneys that they just want to help, so they're looking for a lot of help right now.